Well, my friends, we have come to the last chapter of Let the Circle Be Unbroken. Now, I know I'm wearing the same clothes because it's the same day that I recorded chapter 13, but I just can't wait. So, here we go. Chapter 14. We sped through the darkness, the car's headlights the only light anywhere. Stones hit noisily against the car's underbelly, and dust swirled around us as the lights cast an eerie glow, making the trees and bushes along the road loom larger than they were. A little past midnight, we reached Shokesville. The town was almost as dark as the countryside, and we had not seen a sign hanging from a post which read, Shokesville Farming Supplies. Excuse me, let me reread that. The town was almost as dark as the countryside, and had we not seen a sign hanging from a post which read Shokesville Farming Supplies, we would not have known it was even there. We passed through looking for the sheriff's office, but were unable to find it in the dark. Knowing that it would be closed by now anyway, Mama, Papa, and Uncle Hammer decided there was nothing to do but wait until morning, and we drove on. About a mile outside the town, Uncle Hammer pulled onto a side road and stopped out of view of the main road. "Let's just hope," he said as he turned off the engine, "we ain't sitting in some cracker's driveway. Too blasted black out there to see." He switched off the lights, and then he and Papa got out to stretch. Mama stayed with me, urging me to sleep, and when she thought I had drifted off, she joined Papa and Uncle Hammer. For a long time I lay very still, concentrating hard on Stacey, willing him to be one of the boys in the jail, then tried to sleep so that morning would arrive quicker. But sleep wouldn't come, and after a while I too got out of the car. "Cassie girl, ain't you tired?" Papa asked. His voice was soft and low. "Yes, sir, but I'd rather be out here with y'all." "Come on, then," he said, extending his hand to me. "Button up your coat and we'll watch for the sunrise together." When the dawn came, we freshened up as best we could, waited anxiously for 8 o'clock, then said a prayer and went back into Shokesville. We easily found the sheriff's office, but when Uncle Hammer had parked the car, we sat unmoving, staring at the building. Finally, Papa took a deep breath and opened his door. Mama and Uncle Hammer followed him out. I remained behind, thinking Papa would not let me go inside. "Ain't you coming?" Papa said, holding the door open. I looked at him eagerly. "Can I?" "You done come this far, might as well." Inside, the sheriff of Shokesville listened quietly to Papa as he told him why we had come. Then, unexpectedly, stood and pulled some keys from his desk and tossed them to another man tending to paperwork. "J.C., go bring the boy that's feeling some better on up." The deputy took up the keys and went through the ring to find the right one before standing. Our eyes followed him anxiously down a dark corridor to a stairway leading to the basement. "Been 'specting y'all," the sheriff said as we waited for the deputy to reappear. "Got a call at home early this morning from out of Vicksburg from a lawyer fella, Mr. Jameson, I believe. Said y'all was on y'all's way. Like I told him, there ain't no charges against these here boys. What happened was we got notice here about some boys stealing money from the owner of a cane plantation farther south, and when we found these boys a couple of weeks ago, and one of them was carrying papers come from that plantation, we figured we had the ones done the stealing. One look at them hands and we knew they'd been cutting cane." He rolled himself a cigarette as he talked. "Ain't found no money on any of 'em, but we figured maybe they'd hid it and would have sent 'em on back south if they hadn't have been so sick. They's doing pretty good now." He took the time to reassure us. "Old colored woman been in seeing about 'em every day, Aunt Mattie Jones. She good as any doctor I ever seen." He shook his head as a compliment to Aunt Mattie and lit his cigarette. "Myself, I was gone most of Christmas week, and I come back yesterday to find that they had done caught the boy done the stealing clear over to Texas border. Money still on him." "The boys you got here in the jail," Papa said, "their names Stacey Logan and Moe Turner?" The sheriff waved a languid hand toward the doorway. "Y'all can see for yourselves." We heard the echo of footsteps on the stairs. Our eyes focused on the corridor. I could hardly breathe. "Now, technically, I'm supposed to send these here boys back, 'cause they run off and ain't finished their contracts." The deputy appeared at the end of the corridor. Someone was with him. It was too dark to see his face. "But me, I ain't never cared much for the way them kind of plantations are run. And I got no sympathy for the most of these owners when their workers runs off." The boy came slowly down the corridor beside the deputy. Light filtered in from the doorway, allowing us to see his form. He looked too tall for Stacey, too gaunt, and he was limping. "So I ain't gonna send 'em back. Them boys yours, y'all can take 'em on home." Halfway up the corridor, the boy stopped, the darkness still keeping him from us. My heart raced ahead of itself, pounding like a hammer. "Come on," ordered the deputy with a tug to his arm, and he came forward. Near the doorway, he stopped once more, and the deputy allowed him to take the last steps alone. One step, then two. He reached the doorway, hesitated, and stepped silently into the room. The light played across his face as he stared out, his eyes blinking as they adjusted to the light. There was no movement from any of us. Then he smiled. "Mama, Papa," he said weakly, and Stacey fell into our arms. There was a round of hugging and crying and kissing like I had never seen before. Mama crying and holding Stacey to her, not wanting to let him go. Papa holding them both, and Uncle Hammer standing silently by, grinning. Just grinning. As for me, I was jumping all over the place, laughing, crying, going crazy as I hung on to Stacey and followed his every move. I had never been so happy. Stacey grinned down at me. "Lord, Cassie, you've grown." "So have you. Even got your little mustache growing." He laughed a lovely, deep laugh. His eyes went over us all. "Lord, it's so good to see all of y'all. What about Big Ma and Christopher John and Man and Mr. Morrison? How they doing?" "Oh, they're just fine," Mama said. "And just wait till they see you." She squeezed his arm joyously. "And Uncle Hammer, Lord, it's good to see you." Uncle Hammer's voice went husky. "Seeing you done had yourself quite a time." Stacey managed a dry laugh. "Yes, sir, that's a fact." Uncle Hammer looked closely at him and then nodded, as if understanding a meaning deeper than the words. There were so many questions to ask, so many to be answered, but first there was Moe to think about. Stacey said that Moe was too weak to make it up alone, so while Stacey stayed with Mama and me, Pop and Uncle Hammer followed the deputy back to the cellar. As we waited, sitting on a bench by the window where the light fell upon Stacey, I realized just how thin he had become. Both the confinement and the illness had worn at him, making his eyes look large in his face and giving his skin a dull cast. As I stared at him, a jab of pain went through me at what he and Moe must have suffered. He felt my eyes on him and looked around. "Guess I must look and smell something terrible, huh?" He ran his hand over his uncombed hair, then lowered his voice so that the sheriff writing at his desk couldn't hear. "'Fraid we couldn't much keep clean down there. Miss Mattie, the one who nursed us, fed us. She brought us some soap and water when she come, but still it was hard, living down in that filth." I don't know about all that, I said, but you sure look good to me. And again he laughed that laugh that was so good to hear again. A few minutes later, Papa and Uncle Hammer returned, supporting Moe between them. Even thinner than Stacey, Moe blinked into the unaccustomed light as Stacey had done, then smiled in that gentle way of his, and a new round of hugging began. Shortly afterward, we left the jail, and as soon as we stepped outside, Stacey stopped and took in a deep breath. It had been 3 weeks since either he or Moe had breathed the air of the outdoors or felt the sun warm upon their faces. And as Stacey took in the day, clear, blue and fresh, with just a touch of winter frost, he seemed amazed by the beauty of it all, even in this squalid town. Never knew before, he said, how TJ had to feel locked up like that. Lord, me neither, said Moe, leaning again on Uncle Hammer. And for a while there, I thought sure we was going to end up like him. Well, I expect, said Papa, you both learned a lot. Maybe learned it ain't so easy out here in the world. Yes, sir, that's a fact, Stacey admitted. He shifted his eyes from Papa's, seemingly unable to meet them at first, then looked straight at him. Papa, you and Mama, y'all upset with me, I reckon. You done wrong, son, going off like you done. Had your mama, me, everybody worried to death about you. Papa's voice was unexpectedly harsh. I know. I never meant for y'all to worry, though. I never meant that. Moe looked at Stacey, then lowered his head. A look of shared guilt was on both of their faces. Mama saw the look, and her glance at Papa said she did not wish this to be pursued now. There'll be plenty of time for talking about all this later, she said. Stacey waited for Papa to speak again. Papa gazed at him in momentary silence, then put his arm around him. I gotta admit, son, that for a while there I had in mind to give you a hug first when you come home, then wear you out with one good whipping. Truth is, though, I forgot about all that whipping a long time ago. Lord, sure am glad, Stacey admitted with a spirited laugh, and we all laughed with him. As soon as we were in the car, we went searching for Mrs. Mattie Jones and soon found her in a house at the edge of town. An elderly woman, small, wiry, and weathered-looking. Miss Mattie Jones was overjoyed to see Stacey and Moe. It took her a while to get over the fact that they were really out of jail, but once she had, she said, "Now I know y'all's anxious to get on home with these here young'uns, but y'all's owes me to stay just a while longer and sit here round my table. All my young'uns gone, husband gone. Them 2 boys there, they feels just a bit like mine." Mama and Papa tried to thank her for all she had done, but Miss Mattie Jones dismissed her deeds with a happy grin. "I just done the Lord's work. Just done the Lord's work, sure did. Wish I could have gotten word to y'all, though. Them boys, they asked me about writing y'all, but like I told 'em, ain't no colored folks round here can halfway read or write. School's clear way over to the next town. Got paper to the young'uns there one time, but that old deputy took the letter from me, wouldn't let me send it. And that old sheriff told me not to be sneaking nothing else in or out of there. Told me not to mess in it." She shook her head peevishly at the order. "Well, I wasn't no white folks I could have asked about phoning or writing the sheriff wouldn't have knew about, so I was thinking to get me a ride up to Baton Rouge to send y'all some word." Once again she shook her head. "Yes, indeed. Sure wish I could have gotten some word to y'all." "Believe me," Mama said, "you did more than enough, and we'll never forget you for it." Miss Mattie Jones let out another happy laugh, then set about fixing breakfast. Mama helped her, while outside Papa and Uncle Hammer began chopping a fallen yard tree to replenish Miss Jones' dwindling firewood supply. Moe, feeling cold and weak, remained inside by the fire, but Stacey preferred to be outdoors where he washed his face in the bright sunlight, then cleaned his teeth with a sweet gum stick. I stayed with him, not wanting to leave him for even a minute. I wanted to help him if he needed me, but at the same time, I felt somewhat shy of him. I couldn't get over how adult-like he had become, and that bothered me. It bothered me as well that there was a large chunk in his life now that I could never share. But I guess there was nothing I could do about that it was all part of that thing called change. "Cassie, how come you so quiet?" he said as he wiped his face. "You ain't gone and changed on me, have you?" "I don't expect so." He looked at me. "Or maybe you thinking I'm the one changed." "That's what you thinking." "Ain't you?" I accused. He pursed his lips and was thoughtful. "Guess I have. But that ain't necessarily bad." She looked at him wearily. "It ain't, Cassie, really. Why, if we don't change, things don't change. We might as well stay babies all the time. 'Cause when we grow, we bound to change. You 11 now. You ought to understand that." "And I suppose you do, huh?" I questioned, growing just a bit tired of his attitude of adult superiority. "You ain't grown yet, you know." He grinned at me. "Now you're sounding more like Cassie." I grinned too, then laughed, as I remembered what Mama had said before Stacey had even gone away, that one day we would be better friends than we had ever been before. I could feel the truth in that now. Stacey finished washing his hair and I passed him a comb, all the while continuing to study him, how thin he had become and how scarred his hands were. Finally I said what had been on my mind for so long. "What was it like, Stacey? The cane fields?" A pained look came into his eyes and he stopped combing. "Stacey, what happened out there?" It was awful, Cassie. It was just so awful. "They brung us down from Mississippi, crowding us into that truck like cows," Stacey said when we all sat before Miss Mattie's fire. "Picked up workers all along the way, and when we got deep into Louisiana, the trucks started stopping at farms and plantations letting off workers. Me and Moe, we got taken all the way to the Trousseau plantation, along with a whole lot of others." "That plantation was some kind of big," put in Moe. "Must have been larger than Mr. Granger's even. Mostly planted in cane." Stacey emphasized Moe's statement with a nod and went on. "We stayed in a shack. Dirt floor, holes in the roof, rats all over. We were crowded in there, too. Each of us with just a little spot to sleep. Weren't no beds. No chairs, nothing 'ceptin' kind of shelves along the walls. And they didn't give us anything. They said we wanted blankets, we could sign for 'em up at the plantation store and they'd be charged our pay. Said we could charge other things too, clothes and such. Then they told us we had to have a machete and said we could charge it like everything else." He bowed his head and looked at his hands, then spread them open so that we could see the palms, scarred deep with dark welts. Mama took one of his hands and held it between her own. "Never knew chopping cane could be so hard. Sun up to sundown, and then came leaves. They cut up our hands something terrible. Oh, them cane leaves. They cut up our hands something terrible. Some of the workers, they got gloves from the store, but it didn't do much good. Still cut through." Moe shook his head, remembering. "Worked 6 days in the field," Stacey said, "raining or shining. We worked till we was bone tired. Then come one full week of work and we didn't get paid. We was kind of upset about that, but then we figured we was to get paid every 2 weeks. But then that next week we still didn't get paid. So all of us there talked it over and finally got up the nerve to ask the boss man about our pay. Well, he told us that we were under contract to work till the cane was cut. Said if we was paid every week, we'd run off after we got a little money. And the plantation, it could just function that way. It just couldn't function that way. They had to go out and get new workers every week. Said we'd get paid when all the cane was chopped, not before. Well, we didn't much like it not getting paid till then, but what he said made some sense, 'cause there was some men talking about quitting. Couldn't nobody fault them the way we had to work. So anyway, we went on back to work, figuring to get our money come December. He looked at Papa. Me, I figured to bring back enough money for taxes. Figured to bring back over $100, and I didn't care how hard I had to work to get it. Thought of that money was what kept me going. Me too, Moe laughed curtly. Kept thinking how that money was going to help us get off Mr. Montier's place. Figured to have plenty of money cause me all and Stacey, 'cause all me and Stacey charged up at that store was for a blanket and a knife and some writing paper and stamps. Come every Sunday we wrote letters to y'all, and come every Monday we mailed them up at that store, thinking y'all was getting them. Wasn't expecting none back, 'cause we ain't put no addresses on them. Afraid y'all to come get us. Guess them plantation folks, they was afraid the same thing, said Stacey, 'cause they must not have sent 'em. Moe shook his head wearily. Lord, my poor Papa. Stacey glanced at Moe and went on. Come December, and some of us got fever. The boss man, he said he was going to get us a doctor, but in the meantime he expected anybody who could walk to work. Well, me and Moe were feeling sick, but we went on out working anyway. Second day we worked that way, we was loading cane onto a wagon, and the cane got loose and rolled off on my foot. Moe, he went for the boss man and said we had to have a doctor for my foot. But the boss man, he just said for Moe to get back to work and that he'd come see about it. Well, I waited all that evening and that night, and I was painting something awful. Next morning, the overseer, he come and called himself checking my foot. Said it was just sprained, but I figured there was bones broke in it, and I got scared. Scared I could lose my foot if it didn't get treated. So I told Moe I wasn't going to go. I was going to go. I couldn't work no way with my foot broken. I figured they was bound to give me my money, me being sick and all. I figured to get my pay, get a bus, and come on home. Moe, he said if I was going, he was going too. There was another boy named Charlie Davies, said the same thing, so we went to talk to the boss man. Mr. Trousseau, the owner of that place, he was there in the office, and when we told him we were sick and we wanted to get our pay and leave, they said we couldn't leave. Said we owed them money because of all the cost of transporting us down, and food and housing and everything we charged at the store. Said we had to work out our time till all them charges was paid, and what was left, they'd pay it to us come the last of the cane. We've been working nearly 10 weeks, and they tell us that. 10 weeks! But we knew there wasn't nothing we could do about it. His voice went low. Nothing. He paused and saw both hurt and anger in his eyes. He paused, and I saw both hurt and anger in his eyes. Told the others what they'd said, and some of them wouldn't believe us. Said the boss was just joking us, but there was 2 boys named Ben and Jimmy B believed us, along with Charlie and Moe and me. They decided they was going to get out of there that same day. That night when we were ready to slip out, Charlie, he said he had something to tend to first and for us to go on and he'd catch up. Well, we did. We went on. Ben and Jimmy B, they weren't sick, and they helped Moe and me along, and come nighttime we stopped. Charlie, like he said he would, he caught up with us and told us why he had took so long. Told us he'd gone back to the office looking for money and found it. Said it was money owed us, and he was going to divide it with us. Minded me of TJ, Charlie did. Jimmy B, Moe, and me, we didn't want no part of it. But Ben, he went along with Charlie about the money. So we told him we didn't want him traveling with us. They got caught with that money. We didn't want nothing to do with it. When we left out of there, Charlie and Ben headed on west, and we went north. Got rides some of the way with colored farmers, but mostly we stayed to the woods, afraid to come out on the road. Made pretty good time, but then just west of Shokesville, Moe and me, we both give out, and Jimmy B, he went looking for some colored folks to help us. Maybe put us up a few days. As Stacey had talked, his voice had become so low that I had to lean forward to hear him. Now his words were a mere whisper. They shot Jimmy B. We heard them. Some white man out hunting. Seen Jimmy B, and when Jimmy B got scared and ran, they shot him. Killed him, 'cause he ran. He cleared his throat and spoke up. Moe and me, we didn't know what to do, but we knew we couldn't run. We was too sick to run. We hid, but they got us and took us up to the jail. Stacey fixed his eyes on the fire and stared blankly into it. A long time passed and he didn't speak. Moe said nothing. We waited. Heard they'd suspected us of stealing that money. Stacey's words were drawn, paced, quiet. Heard they'd caught Charlie and Ben. Then heard they was going to send us back. For 3 weeks we heard all that. Then the deputy this morning, he come and didn't say a word. Just grabbed me up, and I thought for sure. Thought, smiling weakly, he shook his head and sniffed back his tears. Lord, who'd have ever thought, he said. Who'd have thought? Then, unable to say anything more, he broke down and cried. When breakfast was over, we waved goodbye to Miss Mattie Jones and started home. Stacey sat in back between Mama and me, Moe up front with Papa and Uncle Hammer. They were still weak, and despite their attempts to keep awake, they kept drifting off to sleep. Papa, Mama, and Uncle Hammer managed to stay awake, talking softly, watching over us. But I too drifted off, awakening several times with a start to gaze once again at Stacey, not quite believing yet that he was really there beside me. Then I would nudge him just a bit so that he would move in some way, and once I knew that he was all right, would go off to sleep again. Past midnight we reached Strawberry, and following Soldier's Road to Smellings Creek, we took Moe home and witnessed the Turners' joyful reunion before swinging east again. Stacey, wide awake now, leaned forward to peer out into the darkness that cloaked the woods and the fields that were so familiar to him. We sped over the bridge once more, past the Wallace store and Jefferson Davis, down to the first crossroads, past the Sims's place to the second crossroads, then west toward home. The old oak, veiled in gray by moonlight, became visible, then the meadow and the field, and finally the house, dark, asleep like the land, and as much a part of it as the trees, black against the midnight sky on the other side of the road. As we pulled into the drive, the dog started barking. Almost immediately a dim light appeared in the house, and from across the garden a round light came moving slowly toward us. The side door swung open, and Christopher John and little man were standing there in their nightgowns with Big Ma behind them, a kerosene lamp in her hand which she held out to the night. David, Mary, Hammer, that y'all? She called. Papa turned and smiled at Stacey. You answer her, son. Stacey grinned and unexpectedly squeezed my hand. Look at him, Cassie, he said. Look at old man and Christopher John. David, y'all bring that boy. For a moment Stacey was too choked to answer. Then he cleared his throat and followed Mama out of the car. Yes, ma'am, Big Ma, they sure did. Stunned, the 3 of them did not move from the doorway. The light in the garden went out. Then all together, Big Ma, Christopher John, and Little Man let out a tremendous whoop and came tearing down the steps. Mr. Morrison came running across the yard. "Lord, the boy done come home," he cried. "He done come home." "Yes, sir," Stacey said, limping to meet them. "I done come home, and it's the very best place to be." I agreed. And that is the end of chapter 14 and the end of Let the Circle Be Unbroken. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you and grant you His peace.